I should just record the sounds of nature. Now, actually, I'm just kind of looking through this. You can kind of see where the creek is pooling. If the creek was actually running right now, the camera would be washed away because you can't really tell it, but it's in the middle of the creek. This is being fed from a spring that is now refilled back in here. And I look behind me. I already checked, actually, make sure there was no snakes or anything exciting like that. But no, I again got a few comments on the whole notion of uh, detachment, what I meant off the grid, country living, Christianity. So again, I think it's good just to have a little bit of a conversation point. Obviously, don't have all the answers, and that's why in this one I decided, instead of just me speaking, I'm going to input a quick video from Alan Watts, who is basically saying the exact same thing, but from a different perspective. Whether a person was secular, Christian, I'm not even sure if he knew what he was. He started off as an Anglican priest, and again, he ended up becoming much more, I guess, Buddhist, even though I don't think he would acknowledge that. I think he was just kind of a searcher. And he died in 1972, way ahead of his time if you listen to his talks. But just to put things in perspective, he would have been older than my grandparents, at least older than my grandparents, way older on my grandparents on my mom's side. So anyway, a different generation. Going to show a clip of that, then we'll talk briefly about it, and then we'll, because I'm trying to keep these videos under 15 minutes so I don't get long-winded and also too boring. Just give it in segments. Then I'm going to give a very short video on Bishop Robert Barron, who is talking about the exact same thing, but from a Christian perspective. And again, Bishop, I'm not a Roman Catholic. Again, I've got a lot of good friends that are Roman Catholic, but just there's too much theologically that we talk about orthodoxy that I kind of disagree with. Again, there's nothing wrong with agreeing to disagree, but I think it would be good, instead of saying, hey, let me show you some videos of some people that think exactly like I do, to actually show two people that are saying the same thing, but completely are coming at it from a little bit different approach. So first of all, let's watch the Alan Watts video, just a very brief segment of it. Then hopefully that will add some clarity, and also it will add some commentary to the whole title of the video. And people ask me a lot of times, well, if you're a Christian, why are you listening to Alan Watts? And my question back at them is, well, if you're a Christian, why are you not listening to Alan Watts? So anyway, let's look at that video first.
What I would call a really swinging human being is a person who lives on two levels at once. He's able to live on the level of being his ordinary ego, his everyday personality, and play his role in life and observe all the rules and so on that go with that. But if he's only on that level, if he's only playing that kind of thing, and thinks that's all there is, it becomes a drag. And he starts being the kind of person who feels that he's just got to go on surviving. See? It's terribly important to go on surviving, to live. And he works at that. And his children learn the same attitude from him. And he says, well, I've got to survive because I've got all these children I've got to support and so on and so forth. And then they take the same attitude. And they breed up children, and they feel compulsive about supporting them because they've got to go on. And so nobody really has any fun. It's just, we've got to make this thing, see? And you don't have to.
We have a whole system of preparation of the child for life, which always is preparation and never actually gets there. In other words, we have a system of schooling which starts with grades. And we get this little creature into the thing with a kind of, come on, kitty, kitty, kitty. And we always preparing for something that's going to happen. So you go into nursery school as preparation for kindergarten. You go into kindergarten as preparation for first grade. And then you go up the grades until you get to high school. And then comes a time when maybe if we can get you fascinated enough with the system, you go to college. And then when you go to college, if you're smart, you get into graduate school and stay a perpetual student and go back to be a professor and just go round and round in the system. But in the ordinary way, they don't encourage quite that. They want you after graduate school or after graduation, commencement as it's called, beginning to get out into the world with a capital W. And so you know, you've been trained for this and now you've arrived. But when you get out into the world at your first sales meeting, they've got the same thing going again because they want you to make that quota. And if you do make it, they give you a higher quota. And come along about 45 years of age, maybe you're vice president. And suddenly it dawns on you that you've arrived. And with a certain sense of having been cheated because it is just the same as things. Life feels the same as it always felt. And you are conditioned to be in desperate need of the future. So the final goal that this culture prepares for us is for retirement, when you will be a senior citizen and you will have the wealth and the leisure to do what you've always wanted, but you will at the same time have impotence, a rotten prostate, and false teeth, and no energy. So the whole thing, from beginning to end, is a hoax.
All right, now that you've seen that video, hopefully that gives you all the answers. Not really. No, the, excuse me. One thing I was just thinking, ironically, as far as just times change, now that I'm 45, I'm closer to 50 than 40, and I'm like, seriously? And once upon a time, whenever I was like, dude, I got to get out of, the parents' farm, probably, I mean, we're talking 40, maybe 35 to 40 years ago, this was filled in a little bit more, and we would actually swim here. Didn't think anything about it. Most of the people I would have went to school with wouldn't have thought anything about it. Now today, just to show how things do change, I'd be like, dude, this looks dirty. I mean, how do I know this is clean? And I can't even see what's in there. I'm not getting in that. Again, it's just times change. So I think hopefully Gen X, especially young Gen X, what do they call it? Zillennial with an X? The born between like 76 and 82, I think. And I'm born in 78. Hopefully we can kind of look at both sides of that. Like when I go to the office and I'm slaving away at building some, PowerPoint, or not PowerPoint, really more of a pivot table on this, that, or the other. I'm not that great with SQL, but I get it. I can fumble my way through it. But at the same time, I can, change a tire, whatever you want to talk about. But anyway, that me rambling. Anyway, back to the video. Alan Watts made several points, and I think anyone can hopefully relate to that, Christian or non-Christian, as far as the detachment, whenever he ends with saying the whole thing's a hoax. And keep in mind, he died in 72, so he was saying this like, I mean, him talking is very relevant to today. I mean, it's not much different. There's also one analogy he makes as far as detachment. And he uses the example of a little girl who had a rabbit. She loved it so much, she hugged it to death. And he kind of says that that's a lot of times what he sees parents doing to their children. Oh my goodness. I mean, think about that today. I won't even get into that. But there is a lot of truth to that. So using that example, and I'll just kind of fast forward to the end of what he said there as far as detachment, for us to just spend our entire existence, whatever it is, acquiring more wealth, acquiring more prestige, getting a bigger house, like a lot of my friends and colleagues do, that's the part where you got to ask yourself at the end of the day, was it all a hoax? I mean, I saw a guy, I was sitting in my wife's coffee shop, and I was seeing him go to his car, and he didn't look like he was that old, probably 60, and he was carrying a little oxygen tank with him. He got around fine, but it also just makes me think, not judging that guy, whatever, but if he did, hypothetically, like a lot of us do, spend our entire lives trying to acquire more and more and more, and let's just say he's like, I got it, I'm there, I'm going to go conquer the world. Well, wait, you're so old now. I mean, you're going to conquer the world with your oxygen tank? Uh, case in point, we don't have the luxury of just, not working. And again, that's not what I'm advocating. I've been working at the biggest company in the world for over 20 years. But it's funny how people look at me like weird for like possibly leaving it. And again, kind of like the Herman Hesse novel Siddhartha, when he spent so much time in the world, and then he says, "I have finally came to the realization the game is done. I can't play it any longer." And he makes the analogy, uh, to play it once, twice, tenfold, fine. But again and again, he says, no, that makes no sense. And that's kind of what I'm trying to come at, to where I'm hoping that, again, do your own thing. But if somebody's sitting here that's a atheist, this person's agnostic, this person's a Christian, I'm hoping what I'm saying kind of makes sense, even though I usually am looked at with that blink, 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 blink. And to use the word Joe Rogan, I mean, the analogy he used, people get so brainwashed that they're just like, no, I got good dental. I got good this. I got a good parking spot. I just need to keep doing this because I don't know what else to do. Do anything. So that is kind of what Alan Watts is hitting at that video. And now, without keep rambling, I'm going to go to a second video by Bishop Barron, talking, and I'm only going to show a very small segment of it, but again, talking about that same thing from a Christian perspective, saying the same thing, but just from a different perspective, and then kind of lead into what that means, at least from my perspective as a Christian, and hopefully to shed light on some of the stuff I talked about earlier.
What if we said, I'm going to opt out? I'm just not going to play the game. Well, one thing, you'll throw everybody off, believe me. They'll wonder what is going on. You'll throw everybody off. But also, you're going to find something like freedom. If we could get that monkey of attachment off our backs, I need to be more wealthy. I need to be more powerful. I need to be more honored. It's an addiction. And our language of addiction is the best way to translate the spiritual principle, I think. How addictions work is you get something and you get a buzz from it. This is booze, this is the drugs, this is sex, this is honor, this is money, whatever it is. But then it wears off. Well, I got to get more of it. And then you get the buzz, but it wears off even faster. Then you got to get more of it, more of it, more of it. Before you know it, your whole life is preoccupied with attaining these worldly goods. And what that's doing, everybody, is it's blocking your access to the will of God. What a liberation if you can finally say, you know what? I'm not going to play the game. I'm out. I've been thinking a lot about this with social media, because I know I'm on social media right now. If you're watching this sermon, I get it. It's good in many ways. But it becomes its own addiction, too. It draws us into itself. And the liberation that comes when I can just say, you know what? I'm out. If you want to understand religious vows, think of it along these lines. It's exactly what it is. You say, why would these people in poverty and chastity and obedience, why would they do that? Because they realize they're in the grip of addictions. Why would you take a vow of poverty? So you're out of the game of questing for more and more wealth. Why would you accept something like chastity or celibacy? Because you don't want to be in that game of constantly searching for that pleasure. Why obedience? Well, because, look, I'm looking for power and prestige, and I'm number one all the time. What if I just opted out of that game? And I said, no, I'm willing to be told what to do. I'm willing to be put in my place by somebody else. That's what happened to Ignatius in Manresa, letting his fingernails grow and his hair grow. I'm out of the game. That's what he was saying. I'm out of the game of who's the top courtier. living in poverty and simplicity. I'm out of the game of who's rising, who's fallen, who's richer. Pfft, forget it. Forget it. So think of this simple image, everybody. They're all jockeying for the highest position. Jesus says, hey, you know what? Take the lowest place. Because you're probably going to find, let's be honest, more interesting people on table 135. Am I right? You know, I mean, you're up at table number 1. You're with a lot of obsessives. You're with a lot of weirdos and obsessives at table number 1 because they're all caught in this. They're not that interesting. Again, am I right? They're not that interesting. Go to table 135. They're a lot more because they're more real. And then secondly, you're going to be breathing much freer spiritual air at table 135. Take the lowest place. It's actually a lot more fun. And God bless you.
I wish I was as good of a orator, storyteller as Bishop Barron is versus my rambling. Uh, but hopefully that little bit of the video I showed can at least kind of give you that aha moment. When Bishop, makes that comment about table 135, that's what I'm talking about. And he makes that comment that, he uses that expression, I'm done. It's done. You guys go keep doing your competition, keep trying to get more money, accrue more wealth, get a bigger house. I'm done. And then he uses that from a Christian perspective. So I think that is what I was trying to articulate. So hopefully if you put those previous videos together, you put this video together and hopefully some future videos. And that's part of the reason I roped in Brian, age 50, coming from a different perspective. Scott, 55, he'll actually be 56 this summer, I believe. Again, totally different perspectives, different walks of life. That'll hopefully be able to speak to not just, well, James, I'm not 45 and I don't work at some corporate job that you have the luxury of quitting. Well, first of all, who has the luxury of quitting? I mean, and again, I don't think it's quitting. I think it's beginning. It's not like I'm just going to sit around and watch TV. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff that I'm just trying to do to still, like I said in some of the other videos, make X amount of money, but not put that as the source number 1. I've taken enough trips, still probably take some more local instead of international, open the museum, open a lot of different things. Been a blessing, but there's a certain point where, just like Bishop Barron said, you say enough. And I think that is kind of that moment. And then to build on what he was saying just as a Christian, he said a lot of this stuff, and hopefully anybody can relate to that, it gets in the way. And I think to a big degree, that's kind of where I'm at, and that's kind of why I'm trying to encourage, at least from my perspective, to do something different, off the grid, whatever you want to call it. But in this instance, to keep repeating, to say, well, maybe I'll get a little bit bigger house. Why? Is that really going to, quote unquote, complete you? And then to what end? So I think that's really, if anything, hopefully that's kind of what it's able to convey. And secondly, if a person, almost anybody I talk to can relate to this, secular or not, is I will say something like, hey, when were you the most content? I'm not saying happy, but just content with life. You were just content. And almost always, it'll be at a point when they were, for example, more simplified, more poor, these type things. And it's the same with, say, Jean and I. I mean, I talk about it with her, and then she'll usually say, well, probably when we lived in that really cheap apartment and we're barely getting by. Now, do I want to live in a cheap apartment and barely get by? No, I don't. But there's something to that. There's something there. Why in the world would my life, I've been more content with it at that point than now? It makes no sense. So again, I think a lot of that, and again, a year from now, Lord willing, and I'm saying, hey guys, I left the company, woohoo. Hopefully it'll be like going great. I know for a fact there's going to definitely be some growing pains. But hopefully it won't be me climbing back, asking for for the company to accept me back. But we'll see. If it happens, praise the Lord. It'll be a good adventure either way. But for those that always kind of look at me with the blink, blink, what are you doing? I think Bishop Barron, especially from a Christian perspective, I think he nailed it on the head when he said, as far as detachment, he said there's a certain point you just say, I'm done. I'm not going to play the game. And you're doing this, not giving up. You're doing this kind of as like Satori, as Alan Watts would say it, enlightenment. You have that aha moment. And hopefully that kind of makes sense. If not, we'll figure it out hopefully in the next videos. But definitely encourage Alan Watts' videos to the Christian and non-Christian alike, as well as Bishop Barron, a very good speaker. And remember, try choosing table 135. I think we all agree with Bishop Barron, you're going to find a lot more interesting people there than continually trying to kiss up to table number 1.